Okay, we all know what this is. This is the infamous dress. The dress. The one that J-Lo wore at the Grammys on February 23rd, 2008. What? 2000? 2008? February 23rd, 2000. Now, the story of how that double-taped green dream landed on her bodacious body, bodacious by the early 2000s standards, is actually quite meh. As J-Lo tells it, she was filming The Wedding Planner and was in a bit of a time crunch, so she was trying to find a dress for that year's Grammys. So on the day of the awards ceremony, her then stylist, Andrea Lieberman, pulled 3 dresses. A white one whose color didn't seem even worth mentioning, and a green dress. J-Lo put this green dress on, and apparently the glam squad was like, that's the dress, girl. That's the fucking dress. But Andrea had an objection. We now only think of J-Lo as the dress's original wearer, but that low number had graced a few other bodies before it made its way to J-Lo's trailer that day. Ginger Spice, aka Jerry Halliwell, had worn it, Sandra Bullock had worn it in another color, and even Donatella Versace herself had worn it and been photographed in it. So, Andrea, as a stylist, was obviously hesitant to have J-Lo in a repeat outfit. One day I'm gonna talk about the crime of outfit repetition, but anyway, J-Lo decided against Lieberman's advice, and, well, we all know what happened.
Who made this?
Versace.
We hit the red carpet and it was a frenzy. I had no idea that it was gonna be such a big deal.
Now, why am I talking about this dress? I mean, why am I talking about this dress with regard to the internet and women's bodies? I mean, the internet was around in 2000, but not as ubiquitous as it is today, so what the heck? Because it applies. I gotta do this with you every time, really? We have this dress and J-Lo to thank for one of the most important technological advancements of the modern century: Google search images. If Helen of Troy was the face that launched 1,000 ships, this dress and J-Lo wearing it was the dress that launched 1,000 searches. The dress that launched Google search images. For real, those aren't my words. This dress is the dress that launched Google search images.
So many people went searching for this and they had no way to search a picture at that time on the internet, so they created Google Images.
Or as executive chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, puts it, at the time, it was the most popular search query we had ever seen. But we had no surefire way of getting users exactly what they wanted: J-Lo wearing that dress. Back in the day when you would search for things online, there was this kind of wall of blue links. It was just a list, and that's what would pop up. That would be it, no images. Just links. The good old folks at Google were seeing how many people wanted to have access to the image of that dress for various reasons. So they were inspired to create Google search images. This isn't the first time we've heard of an advancement in technology because of a demand for, let's just call a spade, a demand to have access to a woman's body, a certain kind of woman's body. So, you know where I'm going with this. All this got me wondering, how does the exploitation, the commodification, the sometimes even empowering reclamation of a woman's body, let the church say amen? Amen! How do all of these things show us the harsh reality of where we stand when it comes to gender and power? How can we examine these topics through the lens of prostitution, sex work, and erotic labor? Lord, those are a lot of questions to unpack, and I'm gonna be honest, some of them we won't be able to get into with this, but don't worry, there will be a deep dive coming on capitalism and sex. Oh, I'm excited for it. Oh! But we're gonna do our best here with what we've got. We're gonna use some key media as some examples to try to help us out. And we're just gonna figure out, what's the deal with all of this? Women's bodies, the internet, all of it. Let's just chat, y'all. Let's talk. Is lovely in the day. The sun is my happy little ray of joy and vitamin D for me. Because I'm depressed, it's a mess. The sun no sun, the sun, no sun. Okay, I'm sorry. Bonjour, nakamahai. Fan jam. Y'all already know what to do, but if you're new, feel free to take a look around, suss out the vibe. My name is Khadija, and I sit on my floor in the sun and the no sun. I'm so in and out of weird keys, and talk about whatever I want. Before we dive into today's topic, I mentioned this a bit in the cold open, but I want to explain that when I first started writing this script, I had intended for it to be like a 20-30 minute video. So deep enough to talk about some stuff, but not too deep. But when you're talking about sex, gender, politics, technology, capitalism, 20-30 minutes is just not gonna really suffice. You know what I'm saying? So to give this subject matter the attention it really deserves, just want y'all to know that this video is kind of gonna be like a two-parter, but the second part is gonna be a deep dive, high production, equal parts ode, homage, analysis, and critique of sex work and sex under capitalism, basically. And it's not gonna come out till like the end of summer. Like, we're starting to work on this now. I'm doing interviews with some fantastic people, because we gonna hear from actual sex workers, whether they're for or against it. But anyway, so just so you know, I touch on some of these things at the beginning of this, but I just want to be very clear that it is not as deep as it could go with this subject matter. So just give me some grace and take it with a grain of salt, understanding that there's stuff going on behind the scenes that y'all don't know about that's diving even deeper into this and even more critically. Okay? Trust me, I trust you? Perfect. Okay. So let's, do our usual pay some bills, make sure the crew is taken care of, and then let's get into it. This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. For those of you that don't know, Surfshark is a VPN or virtual private network that's easy to use. You can pop it in your Google Chrome browser. It allows you to place your phone or your laptop basically anywhere in the world. Surfshark lets you unblock certain websites or content that you can't actually get. It encrypts your data for an extra layer of security, hence the virtual private network. And of course, going back to the being able to change your location anywhere in the world, it allows you to watch anything from any part of the world as long as you're using it. And that comes in handy for me because sometimes I need to watch stuff for these videos that I can't have access to because Canada's great, but it's not that great, okay? So if you want to try Surfshark, use code Mbowe to get 83% off plus 3 extra months for free. That's MBOWE to get 83% off and an extra 3 months for free. Thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back into it. So originally I was gonna take y'all on this long, lovely journey through sex work, the history of it, erotic labor, prostitution, all that stuff. And then yeah, like I said, I realized that this is meant to be a bit smaller. So we're gonna save all that history for the high production deep dive and start in the late 60s, early 1970s. Specifically, New York's Times Square, or as it was known back then, the Deuce. Yes, I will be talking about the HBO series of the same name because that is one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time. And if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Stop everything and go watch it. Like, I understand you have to sit through 3 seasons of James Franco playing twins, but like everything else around it is so great you can forgive it, or not. It's fine. Anywho, as the 1970s were shuffling on in, American standards about obscenity were shuffling right on out. Times were changing, and so was the public's view of sex. A few things were responsible for this, but the 2 main reasons were a variety of court rulings at this time that gave us lay people conflicting interpretations on what really counted as obscene. Plus, it also seems like the police and prosecutors were like, listen, we either catch the robbers, the murderers, or, we keep busting up peep shows and parlors. What do you want? I don't know what kind of Staten Island officer not prosciutto. That's the Bodega Boys. I didn't do that. Either way, this was all compounded by the fact that traditional American beliefs on sex were also changing. We were loosening up. I think the LSD and shrooms, to be honest. This era from 1969 to 1980 would become known as the golden age of porn. I live. In this time period, sexually explicit films were receiving positive attention from mainstream critics. Think of films like Deep Throat as an example. Although maybe I can't count that because I asked Raina, who's fact checking for Maddie this month, and she was like, I was like, can you find me a positive review of Deep Throat? And she was like, no. So Maybe not that movie. Maybe that wasn't a good example. Also, imagine trying to get a film with that kind of title greenlit at Universal Studios now. Mary, please. As you can imagine, when a market gets hot, folks want to cash in, and porn was just another one of those markets, as well as massage parlors and peep shows, according to HBO's The Deuce. But this market, no matter how liberal, free, love, blah, blah, blah it was still like any other free market. Built on the exploitation of its laborers, the women who put their bodies on display in parlors, peep shows, and on the street, and in films. Now, I really want to be careful and not try to act like some academic savior. This video is not a debate on the morality of sex work and erotic labor, however you want to categorize that. No. But at this time, we're saying late 60s, 70s, golden age of porn, if a woman was making money off her, there was probably a man right above her making a little or a lot extra. And that's where the exploitation lies. Because maybe this person's getting a cut because they're protecting me, but who are you really protecting me from? The random Johns or you, sir? Cece, you were not a good pimp. Cece, you were a great okay, I'm sorry. Also, most of us are being exploited for our labor, so sex work is no different. Come on now, y'all. Late stage capitalism has entered the room and she is ready to fuck your shit up. Why are we pretending? Me out here prostituting my personality on YouTube so Google can take half my money? Okay, anyway. I read the script and it says, I'm sorry, I was writing this while I was high. I haven't even been smoking weed as much as I used to, so this is... Anyway, allow me to read you a quote from Mary Louise Roberts' essay, Gender Consumption and Commodity Culture. This will layer things up a bit, I think. If the woman as consumer is a familiar figure of the modern life, central to narratives of family and household, the woman as commodity, usually figured as a prostitute, is situated where capital and sexuality meet, and as such, can tell us a great deal about the workings of gender and power in modern Western cultures. If you really want to analyze gender and capital, gender and power, if you really want to face the harsh truth, or whatever harsh truths they have to tell us about Western society, listen to sex workers, then look around. And ex-sex workers, that'll tell you. Anyway, now having this conversation requires the acknowledgement that we are kind of in a period of women's sexual liberation. There's this almost careless freedom being displayed online. In my Instagram feed, the girlies of all backgrounds, all intersecting identities are showing all their cookies, or some of their cookies, you know? Unashamed, unapologetic, and through a softer, more feminine gaze at times. But we should clarify that this liberation is afforded to women of a certain class. It's much safer to dip your toe in sexually liberated content from a screen than it is on Backpage when you gotta go meet somebody at 5 o'clock. I go back and forth all the time when it comes to the girls thotting and bopping on the internet. On the one hand, I love it. I think it looks fun. I want to have a hot girl summer. I want to ride the boat, etc., etc., etc. On the other hand, I go back to The Deuce, specifically their incorporation of feminist Andrea Dworkin, or apparently I guess she was called the Malcolm X of feminism. Yes, those are fighting words. In terms of fact checking, we can't say that she specifically said this, but in the show, because she was a real person, they use her, the spirit of her to inform the dialogue. She's speaking to Candy, and I'll get more into it later, but she makes this point over and over again. For every one girl, woman, this is the language of the 70s at the time, that feels empowered, either doing sex work or prostitution or erotic labor, or isn't ashamed, or has been able to parlay that into their own sort of careers, has been able to girl boss it, you know? For every one, there are dozens more that haven't been able to. And even the ones that are able to, this is my question now, how much agency do they really have in all of this if they're not really at the top? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're making money off of your body, but who's making even more money off of it?
For every porn actress who thinks she can stand in the light, there are 24 who are used up and tossed aside. Okay. You are the strong one.
Literally, we're all of our jobs are exploiting. Like, I think about this with platforms like OnlyFans and Centerfold, or New Centerfold, where folks could once go online, do their jobs, get paid weekly, and get as many tips as their fans would give. But policy changes over those terms, as well as the hubbub of former Disney star Bella Thorne joining the platform, shifted the power back over to the pimp. platform. Now, I'm not saying folks still can't make a cute coin on OnlyFans. I'm sure you can. And, honestly, as someone whoring myself out, personality-wise on a platform that takes 45% of my wages, I don't know, Khadija, who's a real chump? Going back to the point, I just want to remind y'all that this intersection of technology and women's bodies is more representative of women of a certain class. Ones who can afford the technology to display themselves, ones with stable and consistent access to the internet to also do that, ones whose physical and facial appearance is in demand close to the dominant group's ideal of beauty, etc., etc., etc. When we're talking about sex work and women's bodies online and all of this, we have to remember that not all sex work is equal. Some people might look at a cam girl as, oh, it's not as bad as being a stripper. Oh, being a stripper is not as bad as being a prostitute, or, whatever. Like there's not all sex work is created equally, okay? And also, not all who participate do so with an exit strategy. With an exit strategy available to them. So that's why I go back and forth, because it may seem like those are two separate conversations, but women's sexual liberation on a platform like Instagram or on TikTok or whatever, the trickle down of that still has its effects on those who actually do sex work for a living. Do y'all see what I'm trying to say here? The point might not be completely fleshed out, but again, that's what the deep dive is going to be for. Conversations like this are always so messy because it's not anyone's right to tell you what you can or can't do with your body and how to go about making money trying to survive capitalism, so long as you're not endangering other people. So few of us own the means of our own labor, so no matter what we're doing, there's going to be a price on everything, one that we often don't get to set. And if it feels that way for those of us who have even just our basic needs met, imagine how it feels for the folks that don't. I've thought actually a lot about doing some online sex work. There have been times where I've set up accounts and deleted them before I could actually post anything. I remember I worked with guys, these kitchen guys that would always boast about how if they were a woman, they'd be making money hand over fist because they'd be on all the cam sites and, oh, if I looked like you, I'd be rich, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And all I would ever think, I'd laugh it off, sure, but in my mind, I was just like, as if it's that easy. As if there isn't a long-standing shame and secrecy associated with any kind of sex work, erotic labor, prostitution, especially in mainstream circles. And for those of you that question whether or not that's still true, considering how loose more people are online, I would ask you to consider the different ways celebrities treat something like OnlyFans versus your average OnlyFans content creator. I joked about it before, but if a celeb is on something like OnlyFans, you're not gonna get dick from them, pun intended. You're not gonna get anything from them besides behind the scenes features that you're just paying for, essentially, and maybe some lingerie pics. You will see a famous woman leaving nothing to the imagination on Instagram, and sure, she'll get ridiculed for it, but not as badly as if she announced she was doing sex work. If Megan Thee Stallion turned around today and said she was quitting music and was gonna go on OnlyFans full time, I bet people would tune in, obviously, because hey, but they would wonder why she gave it all up to be a cam girl. Yeah, sure, Megan gets naked online, but that's different. That's her agency. You'll see why it's a messy conversation. The same thing that would allow people to think that or even say that is the reason that I've thought twice about being a cam girl or doing some kind of online sex work. Not just because I've been conditioned into being terrified of doing anything close to sex work, lest I be looked down upon by the masses, but because I have a choice. I can choose not to make money doing online sex work, and that choice is a privilege. A lot of folks don't want to acknowledge that. So that's why I'm mindful about how and what parts of my body I choose to show online. I'm not covered up. I'm wearing a miniskirt right now, please. But I don't take for granted the fact that I personally get to have a choice, for the most part, online. The fear of being hypersexualized is obviously there, compounded by my body shape, skin tone, phenotype, all of that. But some women, femmes, folks with vulvas, however you want to say it, some of us do not get that choice because of class, because of rigid gender binaries, or simply because if you show your body once, then it means that you always want to do it, and it's an expectation, so your choice is taken away from you. J-Lo's dress is kind of an example of that. I mean, people forget that she was even nominated for a Grammy that year because all they could focus on was her body. She walks out on the stage and it's like people were giving her a standing ovation, and when she talks about it, she's just like, yeah, I didn't think that, like, yeah, I know I look good, but I didn't think it needed all that.
I didn't understand.
Come on, you didn't understand what the
swear to you.
deal was?
I swear to you.
There
To
were
me,
two big deals.
But since she put her body on display and it became a huge topic of discussion, since she chose to put it on display and made her body fair game, we created an entire platform off of it, which I just... So how do we bring all of this together? I know there were many moving parts, but let's use some media to try to connect the dots, okay? I promise we'll get to a more cohesive place. In HBO's The Deuce, Maggie Gyllenhaal plays a prostitute turned porn actress turned porn director turned indie film director over the course of 13 years. Tastefully spread out over 3 seasons with seamless time jumps. All the costumes were thrifted. I mean, this show... But her character, Candy, or Eileen, goes through a fascinating journey culminating in her directing an art house tour de force that's not necessarily a biopic, but definitely pulls a lot of inspiration from her real life. Eileen's real life, not Maggie Gyllenhaal. Now, I have a lot of favorite moments from this show, but my top 2 are scenes from season 3's episodes 4 and 6. In the former, episode 4, Eileen meets with feminist activist group Women Against Porn. That also stands for WAP. Do y'all think they did? No. Cardi B. Did y'all do that on purpose? Okay. But Eileen meets with this group of women thinking she's gonna have a commemorative dialogue and chat with the girls, because she's like, I used to do sex work, you're Women Against Porn, I do porn directing now, let's talk, ladies. But Andrea Dworkin had some strong series of words for that ass.
We are doing so for every woman who now has to be seen and considered and subordinated in light of what you have made your work. For every woman who is raped or tortured, if not because of what you thought to film, then for all the help that you gave them making that thinkable for some pornographer to put up on screen.
As I said, Eileen used to do sex work, and she was never ashamed of that. She states that those were the choices she made. But now she's on the other side of the camera. Now she's one of the boys selling an idea of sex for financial gain. Yes, she's a woman, so her touch is a bit different, maybe a dash more female gaze. But Dworkin belabors for Eileen and the audience that the anecdotal, her making it to the other side, turning her sex work into a business and making a name for herself outside of it as best she could. Well, Dworkin lets us know that ain't proof of shit. And it's a wake-up call, not just for Eileen, but for the audience too.
No. The anecdotal does not help us here, Abby. The anecdotal is the problem. Because the fact remains that for every prostitute who thinks that she can manage her own commodification, there are 24 who can't.
Sure, throughout the series of this show, we have seen some messed up treatment of women. But having a main character make it to the other side, I don't know about y'all, but for me, it allowed me to sometimes forget that Eileen was just that, the anecdotal. She was an exception, not the rule. It doesn't mean that she didn't work hard to get to where she got, but as we said earlier, again, this is from the show, this isn't necessarily something Dworkin actually said in real life, maybe not, but for every one person that made it out, there are dozens more that did not and likely never will. Meritocracy is a lie! This moment with Andrea Dworkin shakes Eileen so much so that when she witnesses this next moment, paired with a family loss, it changes the entire direction of her film.
I don't know. What I mean is you can have anything on the menu.
Stand on that, sweetheart. Who's Get around, sweetheart.
So then we come to my second favorite. Last time I showed this entire clip in a video, my video got demonetized. And I've been on too long of a break to be doing demonetized videos like this, so I'm gonna describe it and we'll see how much of it I can use, okay? So in this scene, Eileen is in her friend slash co-director slash financier Harvey's office and begins to explain to him what she saw. The scene I originally played for you a few minutes ago with the waitress standing on the menu. But she cuts herself off and instead explains her original intentions for her film. She was going to talk about her experience, what it was like on the streets, talk to the girls, and show an audience a quote life they can't know. She thought she was going to make an impact by telling her little truth. But then she realized it wasn't hers. It was the whole fucking world's truth. Sorry, y'all, my battery died. But Eileen is basically talking about how this is the world's truth, the price of everything. It's how we live, what we trade, what we give away. It's everywhere, it's everything. Eileen sits down and reminds Harvey of how they end every scene in the porn industry with a guy all over a woman's face, and they call it the money shot. She says to him, who really makes love and finishes that way every time? Or should I say, who before we started making the fuck films to teach them how to do it that way? Dworkin's words, the waitress, Eileen's life, she is wide awake. She somehow stumbled upon what Sarah Ahmed calls the feminist snap, even if her character wouldn't necessarily call herself a feminist. In addressing the price of everything, the way we trade parts of ourselves transactionally, how every woman has had to at some point, whether she wanted to or not, how men made this shit possible, she's confronting a lot of the tensions that repel feminism and capitalism. Feminism and capitalism are at odds. If under the one, women are people, and under the other, they are property. I had a somewhat similar moment to Eileen when I learned about how large an impact JLo's dress had on one of my most used internet resources. But then I found out that Pam Anderson and Tommy Lee's illegally leaked sex tape was the first thing to break the internet. And then I remembered that Janet Jackson's nip slip was the cause of the creation of the very platform on which you're watching this video, unless you're watching on Patreon. And then I go back to what sex work and its intersection with capitalism and power can teach us. Because it says a lot about our society that there is such a high demand for access to women's bodies, particularly women who fall within the day's standard of physical attractiveness. It says a lot that these demands were so high, so sought after. Entire industries were fostered as a result. I mean, we didn't even get into Playboy because, again, this video can't be super long, but sex sells. It's so literal at this point that once you see it, it's like impossible not to. Once you feminist snap, you don't go back. It's true though, once you feminist snap, you don't go back. There are plenty of other intersections here that we didn't touch on. You know, the role that racialization plays, what bodies are deemed more commodifiable than others based on body shape, what role celebrity plays into all of this. I mean, we could do a whole video dedicated to consent alone. Let me know if y'all want that. But going back to the scene, to the deuce, Eileen and Harvey in this office. On the deepest level, Eileen has been broken open. As I said before, she was always honest about what she did. But now she wants to make everybody else just as honest. Now she wants to hold everybody as accountable as she's trying to hold herself. By her own observation, her original film, the intention of that was voyeuristic. Even if it was her story and her little truth, it wasn't the kind of story that could bring a viewer in. The kind of viewer specifically that would never explicitly trade sex for money/power. Notice I said explicitly. In order to get that kind of viewer to see the other side of the same coin, to understand we're not so different, you and I, the focus had to change to someone regular, some normative, everyday woman, one whose occupation didn't matter so much as the fact that everywhere she'd go, there'd be a quote, price tag hanging off her ass.
She could be a waitress, she could be a secretary, doesn't fucking matter. But everything she does, everywhere she goes, she's got a price tag hanging on her ass.
Whether she wanted that or not. Eileen is really trying to make this harsh truth sink into Harvey, so she drops one of the best lines of the entire series.
What men want, no, what they'll pay for. That becomes the world. And we're all whores from this.
Amidst all the intersections and all the jargon I've been throwing at y'all today, the theme that's been peppered throughout all of this, I hope that has come across, is that prostitution, sex work, erotic labor, whatever label you want to use, it can be a really interesting and I think one of the best places to examine Western society's beliefs on gender and power, on sex and capitalism. Understanding this motif is the key to understanding the subtle and not so subtle ways women's bodies, feminine bodies, are often viewed as fair game. A site of sexual exchange that grants access to entry, to search, to YouTube, and to Google simply for existing. And if that sounds cynical, imagine the women dealing with this shit not just from the reflection of a screen, but in the transactional twinkle of a stranger's eye. This whole video, like any of the videos that I do that people seem to like but that I seem to get stressed out about, felt to me all over the place, but the through line is still there's something, a conversation happening about sexual liberation online, how that reverberates offline to everyday folks that don't have the same access points as those being sexually liberal online. There's a conversation here to be had about technology and sex work, whether it provides more agency or disrupts a bit more. There's a conversation here about what we can learn, the main conversation, what we can learn about sex work and what it can teach us about gender and power and all of that. And then of course there's also the exploitation and consent of it all and who is really making money off of you, who's making more money off of you. And you could say whether you're doing sex work or not, but when we're talking about sex work and women's bodies and all of this stuff, there's a lot of stuff to try to unpack here. It's like I feel like I got a whole bunch of headphones and I just started unraveling the first few layers. So Lord, I'm very curious to see what y'all have to say in the chat, because I know y'all be chatting down there. Like I want to know, because this was, even at the end of it, I'm like, I miss so much. But either way, thank you for watching this if you made it to the end. If you, again, have other hot takes or whatever, drop them in the comments. As you can see, let's just all be respectful to each other, okay? If you need to put this message tone was sent with curiosity and not me trying to be an asshole, do that. But yeah, I'm really excited to do the deep dive. The conversations I've been having with some pretty cool folks have been very eye-opening, interesting, challenged some of the ways that I've been thinking about this stuff. And I'm just really excited for y'all to see it and for the work that we're gonna put into it, because I'm already starting to do the things now. But yeah, again, I was talking about merch stuff. I'm still doing that. We're working on it behind the scenes. I'm gonna try and do the thing that I think Shop NB does, where a percentage of their proceeds go to a rotating list of like grassroots mutual aid organizations. Like that's my that's the end goal with that, because I know some people probably saw it and were like, okay, you talked about capitalism and now you're selling merch. But also everything's confined to like Canada. I'm not like exploiting hiring laborers out in God knows where. Anyway, this doesn't matter. This is me trying to over-explain. If you want to check it out, cool. If you don't, all good. Be sure to feed your plets, water your plets, and remember that you can always change your mind, because you can. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Is this a little cool? Should this be a little bit less cool? Is the lighting a bit cold? Because you know I have warm undertones. Okay, sorry. I'm bad. Sorry. Pornography. Porn! Like what? I've like stepped into real talk. Sorry, Travis, this is still part of the bloopers, I guess. Real talk, I've been really stepping into like, this is gonna sound so weird, and maybe I'll do a video on it, but like really seeing how dark my skin is and appreciating it. I don't know how to explain that. Like I always had this weird cognitive dissonance, or this weird like things wouldn't add up with how, I don't know if you could call it body dysmorphia, because of how much I was made fun of for how dark my skin was. And like I'd see people that I thought they were maybe darker than me, or maybe my skin tone, but I couldn't tell because I'd just be like, I don't know what I don't know how to explain it, but I am feeling way more aware of what my skin complexion is and appreciative of it in a way that I never have up until in all my 29 years of being on this earth, which is wild. Oh my God, that's okay. What is happening? This is like, oh, okay. I'm gonna Travis. I'm sorry. Sun, no sun, sun, no sun, sun, no sun. Sun, no sun. Oh my God, why is my look so itchy? I got a mosquito bite. Okay. Also, can we get into this fit? Get into the fit. The Matrix. See, this is the early 2000s vibe that I am into. Okay, and all black with a lot of leather in the. Oh, this is the thigh tattoo that y'all were asking about. My little Nefertiti. Okay, anyway. Whew. This sun. It's the Fenty Beauty. It's the sun. It's the... Okay. Focus. Oh my God. Also, can we talk about the turtleneck? Hold on. Is this whole blooper section dedicated to my outfit? Because listen. Can we talk? Because... one thing I would do is wear a turtleneck and find any way to wear it, okay? And I didn't know we were doing turtlenecks backed and cropless. No. Cropped and backless. My brain moves too fast in my mouth, good Lord. Okay. I'm like reading, like, maybe that could be a thumbnail. I'll do the thumbnails after. Okay.